Welcome to Vesta Divorce. Tonight's topic is on child support, spousal support, and co-parenting. My name is Renee, and I'm glad to have you here with us tonight. At Vesta, our mission, is to provide education, connection, support to help you navigate the divorce process with some clarity and some confidence. We celebrated our 13th year this year. Vesta started with 3 founders who wanted a better experience for those going through divorce. So today's session, again, is on child support, spousal support, co-parenting. We know it's a topic that can feel overwhelming, but one that's critical to ensuring your future stability and peace of mind. We have an experienced panel here tonight. As I mentioned, the legal side is recorded rather than live, but we've got all the topics from your financial health to your mental health, the legal side of things, mortgage and real estate side of things. Please keep in mind that the recorded piece from the attorney is based on New Hampshire law. Because this is a New Hampshire chapter, the legal side is on New Hampshire law. If you're in another state, we do have resources in many states across the country. If you do have particular questions outside of New Hampshire, we can likely help you there as well. So I encourage you to engage, take notes, and participate in the Q&A so we can make this relevant, as relevant and helpful to you as possible. With that, I am going to introduce Mandy, our concierge.
Thank you so much, Renee. Hi, everybody. My name is Mandy Pullenbar, and I have the pleasure of being a member of the concierge team here at Vesta. I've been with the organization for 6.5 years, and I really consider it a privilege to be able to work with our community and really get to know you and your unique situation and help you build a roadmap forward. That may mean working with everyone that you see in this dynamic panel, and it may mean working with just a handful of folks. And we help figure that out so that you're creating your roadmap that is specific to your situation. I got into this work after going through my own divorce 18 years ago. I want to help others avoid mistakes. So I really look forward to connecting with you after the session and learning how we can best support you. We will calling also tomorrow to see how your experience was this evening and see how we can help you. So thank you again. Get a pen and a piece of paper. Take lots of notes because you're going to hear some great information. Thanks, Renee.
Thank you, Mandy. And so with that, I am going to turn it over to our first speaker tonight, Michelle. Michelle, take it away.
Yes. Oh, I did unmute myself. Good evening, everybody. My name is Michelle Papandrea. I am a certified divorce coach. A divorce coach is someone who can support you pre, during, and post-divorce to help you make the best decisions for yourself and your family. They can be your thinking partner and sounding board. So together we work on a lot of different things, but tonight I'm going to focus a little bit about how to communicate with your spouse, your ex-spouse, children, family. During separation and divorce, your communication style typically change, or they need to change with the change in your relationship. That as your relationship changes, as you separate, as move about the process, sometimes we need to change. So here I have learned the Biff method. So sometimes we still feel obligated to answer every text our spouse sends us, or sometimes we're on our time with our children, right? And that doesn't mean we have to provide every single thing that we're doing. And sometimes people want to know. So we don't have to answer every text, but be brief, informative, friendly, and firm. Stick to facts. You don't have to answer every question, every text, but communicate when necessary. A lot of people considering using certain apps like Family Wizard. This way, everything is documented in one place. And in some cases, the court has asked you to use it. And that way, lawyers and everyone can see the communication in certain circumstances. When talking to your kids or other people, don't disparage your soon-to-be ex. One of the things I learned that carried through to me, and no matter how old your kids are, if you're disparaging their other parent, they're 50% that person. They love that person. And if we talk poorly about that person, they can really take that to heart. So really remain neutral. And sometimes that means we have to just take a pause and try not to react to certain things or everything, depending how we're feeling that day. Focus on your children. Don't use them no matter how old they are. Even adult children do not like it if you use them to communicate with the other person, to probe for information. Really leave the children out of the middle. Initiate the child's contact with the other parent. Let them know that you're supportive of them communicating and seeing and having a relationship with the other parent, with the family. So if it's your time and say you have the children for 5 days in a row, just as you might feel if you didn't have your children 5 days in a row, you might want to have a phone call, have a FaceTime, etc. So sometimes it's nice to set that time up and even let the other parent know, hey, tonight we can't do 7 o'clock because we have a family party or something, but we will be in touch at a different time. And just be communicative, remain as predictable on schedule as you can. Try to ensure smooth transitions by ensuring your children that you support their relationship with the other parent and trust that when they're with the other parent that they can parent your kids, right? And if you're co-parenting, which there are different styles than co-parenting, which I think Adrian's going to talk a little bit about after me, it's nice to try to set up similar routines if the kids are younger, meal times, bedtimes, homework. Even through my own co-parenting, I found making sure when there was a disciplinary action in place that it was followed through on both ends, but we were co-parenting. Some things to consider when creating a parenting plan. What's in the best interest of the children and both of the lives of the parent? So sometimes a plan can be created, but it's really not always feasible. Maybe you are the parent who has business travel. Maybe you're the parent who works not a 9 to 5 job. And so you need to really think of what works best for your family, right? So if, I don't know, you have a certain job and you work every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday night, then you want to consider that in your parenting plan. Other things to consider: extracurricular commitments of children and parents. Sometimes we want to sign our kids up for dance, for baseball, whatever it might be, but the other parent isn't always on board to help pay for it or to help get the child to the activity. Consider proximity to school. If one of you is a little bit further away, what does the parenting plan look like on a weekday if you have the child and you live 45 minutes away from the school? Facilitation of homework, work schedules, travel, holidays, school breaks. So all of these things are consideration when you're making a parenting plan. What holidays do you want to either split or do one this year? So someone gets Labor Day weekend this year, someone gets it next year, Mother's Day, Father's Day, any other special holidays, family traditions that you might have, adding those in there. Make your plan as detailed as you can in order to set up expectations and routines with everybody. It gives you a real solid guideline for everybody to follow. I think I said this earlier, support contact with the grandparents and extended family so the children don't experience a sense of loss of all of those people through the divorce. Be flexible so the children can take advantage of opportunities to participate in special family celebrations or event. We all know things can pop up. It's Monday. Someone calls you like, hey, we're having a party this weekend. It's not your Saturday, but maybe you can contact the other parent and say, hey, we have a birthday party this weekend. I'd really like to be able to take the kids to the birthday party, which means you in turn would need to be flexible in the future for some give and take. But do give as much advance notice as possible to the other parent when a schedule might change. I know in mine, I had to travel for business. So as soon as I found out, I let his father know. And I said, hey, I'm traveling this week. Are you able to have him all week? If not, I usually called the grandparents. And allow the children to carry important items, even though it's suggested that you try to set up each home the same so they have similar things at both houses. If you have an Xbox at one, that you either have one at the other or you allow them to transport it back and forth if that's something that's needed, but that they have essential clothes and toys and everything's at each house. But say a security blanket or a favorite stuffed animal needs to be able to go back and forth with them. And then plan vacations around the child's regularly scheduled activities and your parenting schedule. So try to, if you know you have this week anyway, try to plan your vacation with your children on the same time or relatively the same time that you would be having the children. If you know there's a big dance recital coming up or a big tournament coming up, try not to schedule your vacation around those children's activities. So if you have any questions, put them in the Q&A. Adrian's going to talk a little bit more about some of the other considerations and tools for co-parenting and parallel parenting. Thanks.
Hi there. I just put my information in the chat. I hope I didn't jump over you, Michelle, with putting that in there, but I just wanted to get it in so I could concentrate. My name is Adrienne Boulogne, and I'm a psychotherapist and a coach. I'm happy to be with you tonight. I work with couples and singles to help them recover and thrive in relationships. I'm available virtually from anywhere, and I've put my info in the chat so that we can connect, and I do give free consultations. So please reach out to me if you have any questions. The things that I wanted to talk with you about today are all centered on the kinds of support that I can provide co-parents at all stages pre and post divorce. I am myself also someone who's gone through the divorce and co-parenting process, still in the co-parenting process and family court process. So I'm very passionate about this work. Discernment counseling. So this is what we call the kind of counseling people go into when they're not quite sure what their decision is around divorce. So this could be something where I'd be helping you or you and your spouse, depending on who's coming in on the conversation, navigate the decisions and the closure of the conflict in the marriage. And this can result in repair work and or dissolution of the relationship. Another thing I do with folks is separation strategies. Again, these are all things that can be done with one person who's engaged in this kind of support, or it can be done in connection with your spouse, your co-parent, your ex. So separation strategies, planning the logistics and the well-being of all the parties that you have. This includes things like telling the kids and certain considerations you have about age appropriateness or other kinds of concerns or developmental concerns or other emotional concerns that you have. Also, how people tell their family, how the community finds out. These are all things that I have come into contact with couples around because it's been a huge source of conflict and a huge source of surprise to folks that they've had a lot of blow up around. So there's a lot of planning that can be done where people can not have so many surprises when you're going through these kinds of separation pieces. But the goal is always to maximize the support that you have around you and that your co-parent has around them as well, and minimizing any conflict, trauma, and delays that you have in the process that you're in. Conflict resolution and agreements is another big piece of what people come to me for. And planning right away the new contract for the relationship you're going to be having. So, this is things like brainstorming about the intimacy level that's appropriate at the different stages of separation and then as the divorce goes forward. And intimacy level involves things like is someone coming over and cooking in your kitchen for a holiday meal, right? Or is that something that is probably too layered in or too connected or enmeshed and it's something you want to peel away and have more individualism around. So I talk to folks about all those different pieces. And again, it's just making sure people do not have any surprises and everyone's expectations are matching up. And then the kids can be matched up with those expectations as well. The functional support that you are providing each other, dissolving the dependency that is always present when we have marriages in different ways, and establishing stability so that everyone is really set up the way that they need to on their own. Parenting plans and provisions. There's going to be more on this in the next slide on the usual issues that come up sometimes after the ink is dry on the divorce and how you can actually be proactive and safeguard both parents from common disagreements. I wanted to mention behavioral health and safety stabilization. So, mental health and addiction instability are common reasons for divorce, and they also can be kicked up from the trauma of divorce. So, there are at times safety concerns for parents and or the children. And I offer clinical assessment, consultation, care coordination, and I make sure that everyone's getting their appropriate care that they need. I help parents navigate the systems involved for interventions like child protective services, crisis intervention, domestic violence resources, and coordination with other community care providers. I'll go on to the next slide. Okay. So I'm going to talk about parallel parenting and high conflict interventions. And this term parallel parenting really refers to an alternative to what people consider regular co parenting. And it's particularly useful when co parents have not been successful in collaborative partnership around the divorce and parenting. It implies the parents function completely independent from each other, even when there are shared legal and residential responsibilities determined by court. It looks a lot like a lot of boundaries in practice, a lot of autonomy in your own separate parenting, and minimal contact between parents as not to cause further abuse, neglect, or conflict. Courts generally do not appreciate the need for ensuring psychological safety in parenting agreements, and they really push for default collaborative approaches. There are useful workarounds, and this is what I help people with. Workarounds that include agreements that you can make that you and your co-parent can discuss and have facilitation and mediation around with me around agreements that make sense for you. And the courts are happy to approve that. And really the purpose of it and the approach to talking about these kinds of things that I'll go over, it's really to protect both parents and be very proactive before situations happen like this and you have to deal with them in hindsight when someone's upset that someone's overstepped a boundary that wasn't clearly defined. So this really protects both parents and it allows for the most stability and healthy parenting that you can move forward in. This kind of parallel parenting is essential in high conflict situations where we suspect there's physical or emotional abuse, or in cases where there is substance abuse and codependency has been the default in the relationship dynamic. I can help assess these complex issues that are impacting the whole family and tailor interventions to plan for safety and continued healing of the relational trauma. All right. So, in that parenting plan, these are the kinds of agreements that make sense. And the goal of divorce is to end the unhealthy relationship dynamics. We can all agree to that, no matter what kind of high conflict or no conflict relationship you're having. So, here are some of the common issues that come up between co parents in my office that can be settled out of court, agreed to during early separation periods and incorporated into your official parenting plan as soon as possible. These provisions go well beyond the parenting plan's schedule and the agreement template that the court paperwork provides. And a lot of people go into divorce. I know I did, and I just completed that template and mediation. No one asked me any other question outside of what was there in that template. And I had the thinnest parenting plan you could ever possibly have. And I've had to go back to court many times in order to have it be comprehensive and appropriate. So, this is something I can help people discuss all the ins and outs of their specific situation. So, these suggestions that I'm just going to give you a taste of, they really do lean towards parallel parenting strategies. However, they really benefit families universally. And you can agree to them and have the court's backing. And that's something that gives you extra support. It really sets the tone for a new partnership that is about necessity and not about intrusion. And kids really need their parents to be consistent and to get along. And parallel parenting strategies are often the way that you can ensure that. All right. So, some of the options here communication protocols. So, this is a big one. So, in your parenting plan, this could be a whole section that gets written in, and your lawyers help move forward in the, or your mediator helps move forward in the establishment of the parenting plan. But the communication protocols is something I would work on with the couple or even with you individually to present from your own proposal. And it's things like exclusive use of one of those apps that Michelle mentioned. And this is for non emergencies. And I love the apps. I think everyone would be crazy not to use them. They have calendars that are shared. So you're not doing like Google family stuff anymore. They have all the appointments everyone's supposed to go to. You can upload the documentation that you need to, or their schedule that somebody hands you from school, whatever it is, their activities.
You can have money exchanges happen right through the app. So it's all documented and accounted for. All the requests are dated, all of the filled requests are dated, all of that communication is there, all the parenting time is laid out. And when there's requests for parenting time swaps or vacation planning or important updates, those things can all be clearly requested and responded to. And the nice thing about it is that you don't want to have your phone blowing up or be blowing up somebody else's phone when you kind of have something that's on your mind and you're used to texting. It can be pretty dysregulating for anyone to be getting communications from their co-parent, and especially if you start dating again at some point, that's something you're really going to want to shut down. So using the app is a place where you can dedicate your own time once a day. That's usually the recommendation I make, once a day. When's the time? Is it 9:30 when the kids are asleep? You check your co-parenting app, sync up your communications if there are any, and that's it. And that's something that you can prepare yourself for, and it really helps compartmentalize and put the relationship in the right space to where you are right now. The other thing I love about it, it's documentation. The court approves the documentation that comes from these apps. So that means you can easily print off something that is completely transparent, the same information that your co-parent has access to. So if there's any discrepancies on any of the communications or issues or compliance, that's something that you have there to support you. And it also deters harassment. So if you've struggled with harassment in communications, which most divorced couples have, that is something that these apps actually even have tone monitors and ways that it kind of alerts people if their tone is not favorable. And certainly if it's worse than that, that's something you can be using in court if you ever needed to. Non-residential parent and child communication protocols is another one. So this is something people fight a lot about. House rule. At my house, all electronics go down at 8 p.m. That's just how I roll. And that's something that should be respected, right? The frequency of communication, the coordination of it, the devices that are going to be used by your kids, how they'll have access to them, are they charged, all those different things. These are all things that you don't need to be struggling with all the time or having it feel like it's constantly not together with your co-parent. You can have this written right into the plan that this is the expectation, and even have an age appropriate way that it evolves forward. Timeframes for requests, cancellations, late drop-offs, these are all things that you can put in place. So if the summer is going to be planned for, maybe that gets decided by February, that kind of thing. And so everything can be in place then rather than feeling like you're at the mercy of your co-parent or feeling like communication is really struggling at last minute decisions or last minute cancellations or having late drop-offs. So there's ways that you can put those kind hygiene protocols right in place in your co-parenting plan. And it's very easy to get people to agree to that before the problems had started. Parents accessing school and health portals. You don't need to have any shared accounts. So that can be an expectation that's written right into your co-parenting plan. Mandatory disclosures is super important. So this is something like new partners. This is something that comes up a lot. If someone is introducing a new partner to the children, what kind of disclosure makes sense for the other co-parent to have what they need in order to parent on their side of the situation, just to manage any of the feelings the kids might have to a new life adjustment, a new person coming into their life, right? Other caregivers that you've brought into the life. So that's something that you might need to have disclosed to you. Social media, if kids have Snapchat or something like that, and it's not something that you're comfortable with, you can write right in there. That's a disclosure that if any kid has a access to an account like that, that it's age appropriate, that it's monitored, and that it's disclosed to the other parents, so they on their side can manage that from their end. Safety issues, something comes up and on your parenting time that has to do with bullying or self-harm or something with their health. They took Tylenol and they're too young to tell you. Whatever it is, you're moving them to a different location for the weekend. You're going to be in Acadia National Park, right? Like these are all things that, believe it or not, they've been huge blow-ups that really these kind of anticipated situations can be legally written up in a way that it just covers it and it just explains the rules of the game. Right of first refusal is one that comes up pretty early. This is something where oftentimes just clarity needs to be written out in the parenting plan. So, really, what it means is the purpose of it is if your co parent is needing to find caregiving for the children during their parenting time, meaning they're not available to provide their parenting time, If they needed to access a babysitter and it was for an extended period of time, like overnight, that would be something where you could have written in the right of first refusal is that they go to you first and they ask for it to be swapped and to see if that's an option first so that you don't have someone who's not one of the parents doing extended caregiving time. And the reason why I bring it up is that oftentimes co-parents can get really bent out of shape around the idea of their children maybe even going to their co-parents parents house, like their grandparents house, or even with a friend overnight. And that's not really the purpose of that. We really want to let parents make their own appropriate decisions about where their kid is spending time. That's all part of their parenting time. That's all part of being a good parent and still being on duty. And so we just don't want to have those things confused. So a lot of clarification is usually needed. We really want to respect people's parenting time and their space and their time. So things like whether you can access their property without their invitation, whether you can go to where you know they're having a parenting location, like if they're going to a park or something like that, you wouldn't be able to show up during their parenting time. These are all things that really can become pretty dicey if you're concerned about that. And it's something that just could be written in. Accessing friends and family of your side of things, is that something that you wanna have some boundaries around? And that's something that you can actually write up, and you can discuss those things and talk about the different dynamics that exist. Neutral third parties is a really good tool to be using. So these are folks like one of your children's providers. Like if you had a child who was in therapy, for example, or a family therapist that the two of you were using to help with any kind of family centric issues between you and your co-parent and the children around adjustment or maybe other things or withstanding mental health issues, something like that. Co-parenting counseling with somebody like me, these are all third-party providers, and it's a really good way to have important, complex things dealt with in the presence of a professional setting with a third party and have it documented. So, an example of this would be like if you had a concern about something that was happening at the other co-parent's home. If you were worried that maybe something wasn't being handled safely or your child told you something, and you were worried about that. One of the easiest ways that I can help people walk through is contacting the child's provider if there is one in order to make them aware of your concern and involve them appropriately in order to vet a concern that you have or also support you in any sort of concern that you might have and provide some other third party intervention there if needed. So that's something that I help consult with a lot and help parents work through. And then you just want to think about unique situations that you have. So, a lot of times things come up that are very specific to you and your family. This can be as interesting as what's happening with the pets that you share. And I've had couples before be divorced and have the dog go back and forth to the different house with the kids, and it works for them. So, like, these are all things you just want to think about because every once in a while someone will go on vacation and there'll be a default expectation that the other parent's going to be taking the animal and other things like that. So, it's something that you can just discuss right away and make agreements about. Sometimes some unique situations have to do with when children are adopted and how that legacy of that is going to be carried forward. Is there going to be relationship or discussion about something really sensitive like that with the children? And how can the two of you be on the same page about planning for something like that? This comes up around personal histories too. If there's family trauma on one or both of your sides, how are the two of you going to answer those complex questions when they come up? If there's estrangement or other kinds of complicated histories, and how is there like a respectful way that everyone can be on the same page? Because you really just don't want the kids to be confused, and you don't want them to feel like there's family secrets or complicated things that happen between their parents or things they can't ask about, right? And something I help people with a lot. And believe it or not, lots of fights happen around haircuts and piercings and discussions about religion and discipline approaches. These are all things that may or may not be necessary for people to be involved with the other parents' decisions, but they do come up a lot. And even just having an exploratory conversation about the utility of agreements or the way that we let certain things go and kind of manage things on our side of the road, that's something that really goes a long way and can save a lot of time in court, can save a lot of time in stress and definitely can help you stay more focused and connected to paying attention to your kiddos and helping them manage all this adjustment. So that's all for me. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Barb Shigog. My role on the team is I am a CDFA and I'm a CPA. So I am the numbers person. I work with clients as a financial neutral. So I'll work with both parties. And let's say they're going through mediation. You have a neutral third party prepare all the financial statements for you. So it's verified from a third party. Sometimes that helps a little bit when you're going through mediation to be able to come to the mediator with all your finances, what you want to do. And also then I work for just one party. And it can be as much as helping you gather your financial statements to all the way through just spending a couple hours reviewing your settlement agreement. The same way that we say it's important to have an attorney review your settlement agreement, I would say it's also a really good idea to just grab a couple hours of a CDFA's time and have them just point out anything that they see. When you look at how you should preparing for divorce, really what you want to do is when you're looking at the key financial issues, the more organized that you can come, the better off you are as far as being prepared and knowing, being able to translate this is what we have. So what you're going to do is also to make sure that you're aware of any copies of your banking, your investments, retirement statements. We go through it all. So it's really important that as you're thinking about getting divorced, you think about all the aspects, because sometimes it's easier to track down paperwork before you tell your spouse that you're thinking of this. And you're also going to eventually need your marriage license, birth certificates, medical information, more for the settlement papers, but those are just some of the financial documents that you'll need. And then when you want to, just things when you think about divorce, 5 things that you should know. You are entitled to half of everything. That's on the surface, okay? Now, is everything negotiable? Yes, everything is negotiable. You can talk about maybe there's a reason. So, for example, when you think about support, maybe one party is not established in their career. So there might be a reason that you want to give one party more assets than another. And then the other thing too is when you look at an out of court settlement, you can agree on, there is no rules. When you go into litigation in a court, that's when all of a sudden that you have to look at you'll have to look at everything that you have, that they'll look at it and they'll make the decision for you. So what you really want to do, and again, I can't stress enough, is before you finalize everything, talk to your financial advisor and make sure you know what you're getting. So I help clients through, pre, and during. And then after the settlement, I happily transfer them over to Robin, who's going to take it from here.
Thank you, Barb. Hi, everyone. So nice to be with you tonight. So my role in this journey is to help people to plan their finances after the divorce. Many of you will be on your own for the very first time making a lot of these decisions. And it comes with so much emotion, right? We've heard all the way through of co-parenting and children and finances. There's just so much change happening that the first thing that you really need to do is just take a breath and settle yourself a bit around the money piece. That will help build your confidence. It will help you feel more in control. And hopefully, if you're working with someone or trying to do it on your own, you'll be able to create that next stage of life for yourself and security that you may want and need. So adjusting to your new normal means that you need to start by just prioritizing, sorting and prioritizing, right? You have 100 things to do when you're legally divorced. And so figuring out what of those things, what's changing, and what of those things can I do now? Do I need to do now? Can I do soon? And maybe can I wait till later? So that is the first step I do with clients, is just have them walk through everything that's on their mind, go through the full divorce decree to note all of the dates and the divorce decree, when things need to be transferred by, and just when policies might need to be shifted, accounts change, all of that needs to be documented in a way that you can create a task list for yourself. So that now, soon, later is a really great way to help you not get overwhelmed by the multitude of things to do. So one of the first things is understanding your new financial picture. And that's the ins and outs, right? So you're signed legally, alimony is perhaps going to start, maybe child support. So your cash flow, where is your day-to-day living expenses coming from? Where's the money from that? Are you working? Are you retired and maybe receiving Social Security? Are any of those things happening? And do they cover the expenses that you have now as you're managing possibly a house on your own or children? And if there is any kind of gap between what's coming in and what's going out, then how are you going to fill that gap? Right? Are you going to work, or are you going to need to create an income stream from your investment accounts? So just you need to sell a house. There's so many things that just understanding, number one, how am I going to make the next few months work so I can get myself settled financially? Getting divorced financially is the getting accounts in your name. You may have gotten a part of your spouse's retirement plan. So a quadro, QDRO, qualified domestic relations order, would need to be executed to get that account in your name. There may be checking accounts or real estate or other things that you need to get in your name before you'll have access to the funds. So that, again, is something you may need to have call custodians. You may need to track down employer information to get all of these things done. CPAs, get your tax return. If you don't want to use your joint tax return preparer, then you will need to find your own CPA. And that is something, again, we're helping as a financial advisor. I've been helping clients for over 30 years with these major life transitions and helping them find the resources. Who's on their team? If it's me, then who else do we need to work with to help someone feel really divorced financially, legally, so that they have the freedom to create that life? Maybe an estate attorney. So there's lots of things that need to happen, and just charting them all out for yourself. Possible tax bracket changes, right? If you're going from 2 incomes to 1, or your income stream has changed, you're getting alimony and child support, which may not be taxable. You might be in a lower tax bracket. You might need to make estimated tax payments if something needs to be sold to provide you that security that you need, either an emergency fund or to provide you a paycheck for your living expenses. So what in your accounts, in your assets, is changing, and how is that reflected on your tax return? So that's a lot right there. And so just working with someone, I highly recommend building that team so that you have support. And then the impact of the division, first day, where's your money coming from? How are you going to pay your bills? And then planning for the future, doing a financial plan so that how much you can spend every year on things. So really understanding, so you don't run out of money. This is the time that really you want to get anchored, and am I going to be okay? And what can I spend? And not all money is the same. You have tax-free money for Roths, alimony, and you have tax-deferred money from retirement plans where you have to pay on every dollar, and then regular investment accounts that you may not have to pay taxes on. So again, that's collaborating with your financial advisor and a CPA to help you gain some clarity around what you have. And then I already talked about the quadro, which is a legal document to get access to your ex-spouse's retirement money. And then finding yourself again is such a key piece of what I help my clients with, in terms of everything is shifted, but you don't have to carry a lot of that baggage with you. Who do you want to be in this world? What do you want your life to look like? What are your values? How do you want to create family in your life? How do you want to share your wealth? How do you want to share your resources? Giving yourself time over that first year to really explore all of those things are going to be key to help you create that next stage of life for yourself after divorce. Thank you. I'm going to hand you now over to, I believe, Renee.
Thanks, Robin. We're actually going to give it to Laura first.
Thank you. Thanks, Renee. Thanks, Robin. Great information. Good evening, everyone. My name is Laura Gamache. I am a licensed broker in New Hampshire and Massachusetts. However, I know we have people that are outside of this area, so I do have connections throughout the entire country. So definitely can sync you if need be. But just to touch very briefly, I know you're getting a lot of good information more around kind of the alimony, but just to touch a little bit on the marital home, as it's been discussed here and there through some of the other presenters, is really just making sure that you do bring in somebody that can assist with you around the home. Obviously, for many couples, it is the most valuable asset that they have. So just knowing that figure. So when you're having those conversations with the attorneys, et cetera, that you actually have a correct value on your property. I know everybody loves just to go to good old Zillow and see what this estimate is. Sometimes they're accurate and sometimes they are wildly wrong. So you just don't want to make sure you gamble that big a number based on some number that's provided by the internet. Typically, we'll see as well as a conversation is one, if someone's going to be keeping their house and or reselling the property. So what's going to be happening around that? What's the scenarios? What does that look like? And then as it's been touched upon already is just your kind of your living expenses. And then biggest thing that Renee will segue into after me is just, can you afford the house on your income, right? So we see a lot of people get themselves into some pretty tricky predicaments, unfortunately, without talking to myself and Renee ahead of time, because once that divorce decree is done, it's done. So you can't go back and renegotiate this when you have already signed, sealed, and delivered. If you're going to be going to next slide, if someone's going to be going to buying the home, again, the total expenses of can you afford the property, right? I can just give you the value of the property. And again, just okay, what's it going to look like? Renee will chat more on that. But just again, can you afford that? A lot of the times too, when people are going through divorces, a lot of the maintenance items of a house has been left to the wayside. So are there going to be some big ticket items that now it's going to fall on yourself for that repair, right? It can be very expensive to have some of these big ticket items repaired or replaced. And if those haven't been done or haven't been managed for some time, then it's just, again, taking consideration, having another set of eyes on something to just know what you're getting yourself into as well. Because a lot of times, maybe that wasn't your part of your to-do list of doing the maintenance of the house in general and the upkeep, et cetera. And if you're not savvy with that knowledge, paying somebody to come out here and do the landscaping, do the snow, right? Maintenance, the heating system, how is the roof, et cetera. So those can be all expensive items that you're writing some pretty big checks if you're not having some eyes on keeping that consideration. And then as touched as well as that capital gains, just keep in mind when you went from a couple and now you're going to be a single. So if that's the case and you're taking the home, keeping in mind that that is however your status is by the end of that year is how you will be filing your taxes. So just keeping that in mind. Some people, if they've been in their homes for some time and they have some pretty good equity, also some things that you need to really plan and manage for when you go to sell that property, depending on now you're a single for $250 versus a couple for $500,000. So again, things that you just need to really keep in consideration when it comes to that. Going to the next slide. So if it is going to be moving along to selling the property, like I mentioned, the earlier you bring us in, the better, just to have some numbers just for your guys' position. Two ways, right? You can do a comparative market analysis that any licensed agent can do. And we typically don't charge anything for that versus an appraisal where you can be typically up to $600 or $700 for that appraisal when you're having a certified licensed appraiser go out there and gives you that one specific number, because sometimes the people can't come to an agreement on a price. Sometimes it comes down to that. Sometimes people just can get a couple of their own market analysis done. But again, just more costly things that you just keep in consideration. market timing. What type of market are we in? We've been in a seller's market for some time, but there are many places in the country that they have been seeing a softening and a little bit of a shifting. So again, keeping that in mind of when you start this journey, sometimes it's a year or so, if not more, that it could take to actually coming to that kind of choice of when we're selling, if we before, during, after, or whenever that, just keeping in mind, what is the market right now, right? Because you can get a local knowledge because the news is the news, but guess what? That's not local, right? So specifically, you have someone that has their kind of boots on the ground and really knows the market well and can give you a really good snapshot of your market as well. And again, allowing enough time to sell. We've seen days on market are ticking up for sure across the board. If you're selling, where are you going to be going to next, right? So you need to have that planning. See if you have some contingencies need to make subject to you finding something, subject to you selling, all things that you have that conversation around. But I will now pass it over to Renee. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks so much, Laura. Again, welcome everybody. My name is Renee Coleman. I am a residential mortgage lender and a certified divorce lending professional. So I do work in divorce every day. I'm also the founder of a company called Divorce Mortgage Planning of New England. So I help clients understand what their options are with the family home. Can I keep the house? Do we have to sell? Can I refi? Can I buy my spouse out? All the things, all the options. So tonight's topic on child support and spousal support. So when we're talking about our options with the house, can I qualify for a mortgage post-divorce? And there's lots of things that change with qualifying, right? So probably most of us have a really decent interest rate right now. And if you have to refinance, you are going to be in a higher interest rate. Qualifying guidelines change when divorce is involved. The rules change. Mortgage guidelines are pretty complex, and they get even more complex when divorce is involved. Your income might change. We see a lot of income might decrease post-divorce. And credit's a big one. I have been asked often, does your credit score go down after divorce? No is the short answer. One is not related to the other. Just the mere fact of getting divorced does not affect your credit score at all. What does affect your credit score is if bills aren't paid on time, or bills are missed completely, or if accounts are closed. All of those things will have a negative effect on your credit score. So just the fact of being divorced does not have any impact on your score. It's the actual accounts themselves and what's happening with them. Just be mindful of that understand what debts are in your name, understand whose responsibility to pay them, and whose credit is going to be affected if they're not taken care of. Short answer, no, your score does not go down just because of the divorce. One of the other things I wanted to mention tonight is language. Language matters in your settlement agreements. So when it comes to the marital home, we see all kinds of language in settlement agreements, and we want to make sure that you're able to execute post-divorce whatever it is you've agreed upon, right? Whether it's one spouse is keeping the house and buying another one out, or we're going to sell the house, whatever you've both agreed to, we want to make sure that it's written up correctly in your settlement agreement. So we can't have any ambiguous language in there. We need dates. We need specific time frames and things like support. We need some very defined dates and continuance. Next slide, please, Barb. So when we're talking about spousal support and child support, usually my clients come to me and say, I'm getting a divorce and I want to keep the house, which typically is an emotional decision rather than a financial decision. So you want to think about the long-term affordability of that mortgage. And remember that a mortgage is long-term. Support likely is short-term, depending, right? So again, we want to make sure that you're taking all these things into consideration and talking to somebody ahead of time so that you know what your qualifications are. So when it comes to support, can you use support to qualify for a mortgage? And the short answer is yes. Child support and spousal support can both be used to qualify for a mortgage. They're both income to you and can be used to qualify. Now, there are some rules around it. So it's going to depend what type of a mortgage that you're getting, but most of them are going to require generally 6 months of receipt before we can use it as income. So if your divorce settlement says you're the spouse that's been awarded the home and you have 60 days to refinance the mortgage and remove your spouse, only you need support to qualify for that mortgage, 60 days isn't going to be enough. We have to show that you've received that support for 6 months. Now, there are some programs will allow, if there were court orders for temporary support, we can start the clock. So even if the numbers are slightly different from the final orders, from temporary orders, that's okay. We can start the clock. So 6 months receipt, typically, and a continuance. We have to show that the support is going to continue for a minimum of 3 years. So that comes into play mostly with child support. In New Hampshire, child support ends at age 18 or when they graduate high school, depending, right? They could be 17, they could be 19, but 18 for general purposes. And from a lender's perspective, if the child is age 15, even 15 and 1 day, we likely can't show that the support is going to continue for 3 years if it does, in fact, end at 18. So we have to be careful about timing, the way your support is worded in your settlement agreement. So talking with a lender like myself that specializes in divorce is going to be really important if you need that support to qualify. The third piece, which my apologies, it's not on my slide here, so receive it for 6 months. It has to continue for 3 years. And the other piece is where you receive that support is important as well. So we see a lot of times that spouses still maintain a joint bank account post-divorce. And it's usually the account that they use to square up for the kids. So meaning I paid for soccer lessons this week and you paid for baseball the following week. And so even though my support, I'm supposed to pay you $1,000 this month, after we square up, it's $900 that I owe you. And from a lender's perspective, we have to show exactly the amount. If it's whatever the number is, $1,000, we have to show exactly $1,000 going into an account that does not have your spouse's name, cannot have the payor's name on the account. So if you're the spouse receiving the support, the account, you can have anybody else on the account. If the kids are on your account or maybe your parents are on the account with you, that's okay. It cannot have your spouse's name on the account. And the squaring up, we have to see the $1,000 going in. You can do anything. We don't care what's coming out. We just need to see that exact amount going in every month. So just some of the rules around support and using it from a mortgage perspective. So that's all I wanted to talk about tonight on support. And so I think at this point, we are going to, our legal team has a recording that we're going to play.
Hi, my name's Keeplate. I am a family law attorney. I am licensed in both Massachusetts and New Hampshire. For tonight's program, we are in the New Hampshire hub, so that will be the focus of tonight's presentation. When I talk about alimony, child support, how they interrelate, all of that is based on New Hampshire law. If you are in another jurisdiction, please connect with the concierge and they can help connect you with somebody in your jurisdiction to talk through alimony and child support. My practice encompasses helping people through the outer court process, through mediation, through collaborative law, I do direct attorney negotiation, all in an attempt to keep cases out of court. The component of my practice also involves court-related work as well. So to start my section of the program, I want to explain the difference between alimony, also called spousal support, and child support. Child support is funds that are paid from one parent to the other for basic child-related expenses, such as food, shelter, clothing, kind of the big items. Alimony is funds that are paid by one spouse to the other spouse to help with that spouse's financial needs. Child support is based on a state child support guidelines that's recalculated or reviewed by the state every few years. And alimony is based on need and ability to pay, as well as a statute in New Hampshire. Child support can always be modified or changed in the future. It can never be permanent. Alimony is something that could be potentially modified over in the future or permanent. If it is permanent, there's usually a reason for that. And often that is something that is bought by one spouse to the other. Essentially, maybe one person is receiving more of the marital assets in order to have a permanent end of alimony. So we'll focus now just on child support. Child support is based on a state formula. As I mentioned, there's a child support task force that reviews them every few years and makes different changes to them. So when we run child support calculation, we input into this formula both parties' gross incomes, the number of children, medical support that each party is responsible for, child care expenses, and that will take into account all of those factors, and then it will give us a number. And it's a presumption that is the correct number. In New Hampshire, child support generally ends when a child reaches the age of majority, which is generally age 18. Child support can be modified every 3 years if there's a significant change in circumstance. So if somebody has a new job and maybe they're earning 20% more, then child support can be recalculated, or if the parents agree to a recalculation. Child support is paid by one parent to the other. It is not paid to the child. Payments should be made electronically so that children are not handing checks back and forth. We'll keep kids out of this as much as possible. And then the parent who receives child support decides how it's going to be spent. There is no accounting to the person who pays the child support because that is just the presumed amount that is for the care of the children. In New Hampshire, we have a relatively new statute that talks about parenting time should be approximately equal and really nothing less than this division of time between the parents. And because of that, if there is approximately equal parenting time, then there may be a change necessary for the child support guidelines to account for the fact that parents are sharing parenting time approximately equally. So when I mentioned that the child support formula takes into account parents' gross incomes, the actual support amount is paid with after-tax dollars, meaning that the person pays it out of their post-tax income. They do not get any type of deduction or reduction on their tax returns for what they pay. And then the person who is receiving the child support receives that tax-free, meaning they do not have to pay taxes on it. They do not have to report it as income on their tax returns. Despite that, child support, as Renee is going to go over, may be considered income by mortgage lenders with certain limitations that she will describe. Child-related expenses that are not covered by child support. So I mentioned child support is for basic food, shelter, clothing. Then their children have other expenses that need to be addressed, and there needs to be some type of agreement on how those expenses are going to be paid. So these are things like uninsured medical expenses, dental expenses, prescriptions, orthodontists, those things that are not covered by insurance. Child care should be addressed how it's going to be paid. But you also, as I mentioned, you may remember, child care is taken into consideration with the child support guidelines calculation. Extracurriculars, there is law in New Hampshire that the person who receives the child support should be paying extracurricular expenses from that. But oftentimes, extracurriculars can be fairly expensive, so we often agree that parents will share those expenses because they can be quite considerable. Travel expenses for children where they may be traveling to see a parent who no longer resides in the state. That is something that needs to be taken into consideration. Might be something that is offset with child support. It's all something that needs to be addressed.
I mentioned that I help people through the mediation process. The wonderful thing about mediation is that it allows people to have discussions about things that unfortunately the judges just do not have the time to include in their orders. So these are things that can be addressed between parents as part of mediation. Things like cost of driving, maybe college exams, payment of college expenses, those types of things you could be more creative in a mediated resolution. With respect to life insurance, if somebody is paying child support, oftentimes we include some requirement for maintaining life insurance so that if a parent were to die before the child turns the age of majority, there are some funds available to make up for that lost child support. Now, with respect to alimony, that is based on a person's need for supports and a person's ability to pay that supports. New Hampshire also has a statute that says that alimony would be 23% of the difference in gross incomes between the parties. The statute also talks about the length of time or duration that someone may have to pay alimony, and that is based on the length of your marriage. So alimony generally will be paid until the first to occur of either a date based on the length of the marriage, the age of the payer if they are getting close to Social Security or retirement age, the remarriage of the person who's receiving it, and the death of either party. If the person receiving alimony is cohabitating, then that may be a basis to end or reduce or change the alimony being paid. Similar to child support, the person who is receiving alimony does not report it as income on their federal tax return, and the person paying the alimony does not reduce their income on the taxes by the amount that is paid. And similar to child support, alimony may be something that can be taken into consideration with respect to qualifying for a mortgage. Alimony can be modified in the future if there's a material change in circumstances, just as I mentioned with respect to child support. So in child support, it cannot be permanently waived, meaning you cannot agree that there is never any child support. You cannot agree that you'll never ask for child support. If there is a child support presumption, the number that I mentioned is presumed to apply, then, and you're doing something different, you better have a real reason to explain to the judge why you're doing something different, because that's support for a child and you cannot bargain away your children's rights. Difference is alimony, where you can have negotiations, you can do something different. And again, that's why mediation is wonderful, because you can agree to do something different that you might not get from a judge in court. So what that means is alimony can either be waived, meaning neither one of you ever has the right to ask for alimony from the other in the future. It can be not ordered at the time of the divorce, but your rights to alimony in the future remain open. Or sometimes, if there are sufficient funds in the marital estate, alimony can be bought out, meaning one spouse who would be otherwise paying alimony would pay a lump sum from their share in marital assets to the other spouse, basically in lieu of ongoing monthly alimony. And that's what we call it, an alimony buyout. And with that transfer of additional funds, then neither one would have the right to ask for alimony in the future. And then, as I mentioned, mortgage lenders can take into consideration alimony when qualifying someone for a refinance or an admission mortgage. Now, child support and alimony can interrelate in New Hampshire. It is possible for you to have a divorce where someone is paying both child support and alimony if there's sufficient income. If that is the case, where there are dependent children and a dependent spouse, that's where it will be really important to bring someone like Barb on board who can run the different scenarios so that we can educate the judge about how best to support the family. And there are also situations where one person who has primary custody of 50-50 of the children may actually have the higher income. And so even though they technically may be entitled to child support,
they may also have an obligation to pay alimony the other spouse who does not have primary custody or has a 50-50 parenting plan. So these are where alimony and child support become more nuanced, and it's important to bring on a financial person, a CDFA like Bar, to help your divorce attorney through that process. So that is my last slide. Thank you very much, everyone.
Excellent. Thank you for playing that for us, Mandy. I know Kate was disappointed she couldn't be here tonight, but we did have a few questions in the Q&A for her, and we will forward those to her to answer. I don't see any other questions in the Q&A, so I think that will be it for tonight. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. I hope that you got some good information and were able to answer some of your questions. As Mandy mentioned earlier, she and her team will be reaching out to you in the next day or two to connect and see if you need any help from any of the panel tonight or introductions to them. So thanks for joining us, and we hope to see you on another one of our webinars. Have a good night, everyone.
Right.
Good night.